So this morning's first plenary is Information Changes Everything, informing the public about sustainability choices. And it was designed from a very particular context. Sustainability challenges, as we've been hearing yesterday, requires technological innovation and clear, forward-looking policy. But neither one of those by themselves are going to solve these massive, complicated problems that we have. A key ingredient is changing behavior of individuals, behaviors of institutions. And people need to be motivated to do that, need to be motivated to demand and adopt those innovations, and to encourage more thoughtful, more comprehensive policies. So a key way to motivate people is to inform them, and that's what we're going to talk about today. And today's speakers represent pioneers, both in China and in the United States, in informing people and institutions about the status and trends of the environment and our effects on the environment, and ideas and choices. And so I'm really looking forward to today's speakers. And the speakers are, and I'm going to introduce all three of them and then get us moving. And let me do it in this order. First, Ma Jun will be speaking. He's a founding director of the Institute of Public and Environmental Affairs in Beijing. He began his environmental career in the mid-90s when he worked for the South China Morning Post. And in 1999, his book, China's Water Crisis, was published by China Environmental Science Press, and I really enjoyed reading that book. Based on the assessment and analysis of water challenges in all 7 major basins in China, the book suggests that the country needs to adopt new water management strategies to face this water crisis. He worked as an environmental consultant and then a Yale World Fellow from 2002 to 2005. In 2006, he served as a founding director of the institute that he now leads, and he led efforts in the China Water Pollution Map and the China Air Pollution Map, 2 very important public interfaces that display information, and we're going to hear more about that. In 2006, he was named the Green China Man of the Year and named by the Time magazine as one of the 100 people helping shape our world. Our second major speaker is Craig Cox. Craig is a senior vice president for the Environmental Working Group here in the U.S. He began his career in natural resources in 1977 with a bachelor's degree from our neighboring state here in Minnesota. In 1989, he became senior staff officer for the Board on Agriculture at the National Academy of Sciences. He directed 3 major studies, including soil and water analysis, an agenda for agriculture and rangeland health, and new methods for classifying, inventorying, and monitoring rangelands. In '94, he left that staff to join the staff of the Senate Committee on Agriculture in the U.S. Senate, where he covered natural resources, environmental issues, and helped develop much of the conservation titles in the Farm Bill. In 1996, he joined the Natural Resources Conservation Service, part of the U.S. Department of Agriculture, where he actually served as acting Deputy Undersecretary for a short time. And he's currently now the Vice President for the Environmental Working Group, and you'll see some parallels between these 2 organizations. I was supposed to be the discussant for this session, but then I met Karl Ganter yesterday, and I thought, how better to actually have him do this rather than me. So I'm going to introduce him. He will come up and kick off the start. So Karl is a co-founder and director of Circle of Blue. It's an international network of leading journalists, scientists, and communication design experts that report and present information necessary to respond to the global water crisis. He's a photojournalist, a writer, a broadcast reporter, and his reportage has actually appeared in most of the major media in the United States. He serves on Navigating Peace Working Group, which produces policy papers on global freshwater policies through the Woodrow Wilson Institute. He is a longtime member of the Poynter, Poynter Institute of Media Studies. He's presented at the World Economic Forum, Aspen Ideas Festival, Aspen Environmental Forum, and he's a member of the Clinton Global Initiative. So without further ado, let me introduce Karl to come up here and kick us off.
Great, thanks, Don. Actually, a little mistake here. Our first slide is this one. Because when we talk about sustainability, we usually forget to talk about communications and how we connect to our audiences. So we tend to do a lot of work in the field. We work incredibly hard. We publish a white paper, and then we move on. And sometimes the white paper's type is a little small, and it sits on a shelf. So My first little point is let's use big headlines. Also, when we're talking about a project, when we're talking about sustainability, I like to believe there's a relatively simple equation when we're talking about informed decisions and behavior change. And that is taking data, journalism, which is storytelling, the science, which is analyzing that data, even applying some of the storytelling and learning from the narratives, and communication design. What I mean about communication design is we're in a world that's reached far beyond the trifold brochure. Color printers aren't just cool anymore. We have so many ways of communicating. So how many of you use Twitter? Anybody who's on Twitter? Organizations? Okay. We could do a whole session on communications tools, but what we'll do is talk about today with Ma-June and with Craig is some of the exciting things that are happening in storytelling. Some of the things that we do at Circle of Blue, we like to, I said to the folks yesterday who were in our water session, we activate the superheroes in journalism and science and design. We try to spot the trends, we put a face to it. One of the most important things, I think, when we talk about sustainability is we have to create a relationship of relevancy. Why do I care? I have a busy day. I have 1,000 emails in my inbox. I have a house to refinance or a mortgage to worry about. Why should I care about global sustainability? So what we need to do is make those connections. And so to do that, a quick example of one of those stories is we dispatched a team of really world-leading journalists, senior correspondent from Newsweek, the World Press winner from photojournalism in 2006, to the Tehuacan Valley of Mexico. And this was the epicenter of a water crisis and indicative of many, many challenges that we're all working with today, that we're all reporting on, writing about, researching. So the Tehuacan Valley is an area where corn was domesticated, and yet it was drying up. It was drying up because of climate change. It was drying up because of water mismanagement, because of agricultural practices. And what we found there was really indicative of water management in other parts of the world. Great metaphors. So when we're working in sustainability, again, back to relevancy and metaphor, really, really important and to the storytelling. So what we found there is we found factory farms. We found factory farms that were draining the aquifers, that were literally just pumping the water and flowing it through. So we did a huge report on this. We spent 10 days in the field with, again, great journalists, great photojournalists. We walked into these factory farms that were raising pigs and chickens, photographed, documented the flow of water, 14-inch wells just literally bubbling up out of the ground or with huge pumps, flowing it through, pushing the sewage out the other side into the field. 24/7, nobody was there but us and the pigs and the chickens. So big stories, big visuals. We could have all the numbers, we could put all the numbers in a spreadsheet, but several pictures and aerials and the other relationships got us major, major media throughout Mexico when we published this report. The other big pieces that we found in the Tehuacan Valley is these are the faces of a water crisis. These farmers here, for the very first time, had to pay for their water. Their wells were running dry. These were the people behind the spreadsheets, behind the rainfall patterns, behind the actual water data and aquifer levels. These farmers, for the first time ever in their recorded history, were having to pay for water and haul water. What's that mean too? The region where corn was domesticated was drying up, their corn crops were dying, okay? Big, big changes, big, big stories, and names behind, again, I'll say it again, names behind the numbers. Speaking of names behind the numbers, we dug a little deeper. And sometimes when we're talking about sustainability and we're reporting about sustainability, most important tool. What's the most important tool for an interviewer, for a journalist? Anybody? Most important tool? We're wearing one. We're wearing two of them. Listening. Listening very, very careful and being patient and waiting for the information. So we sat, and Francisca Rosa Valencia took us around the Tehuacan Valley. She took us to her village. She showed us her crop was drying up. She also showed us how they're planting amaranth, an ancient grain that was much more drought resistant. So there were some solutions if we just slowed down to listen. She was growing amaranth here, her corn crop's dying here, okay? So we stopped. I had a video crew with me, former television journalist, so don't hold that against me. So we had a video crew. Video crew's all excited. They're videotaping, they're taping Francisca. We're asking her about, she's giving us the data, giving us the information, telling us about her crops. She had all this information at the tip of her tongue. And then I asked our reporter, I said, his Spanish was much better than mine, and I said, just ask her one last question before we go. Ask her what water means to her and her family. And then I had to step on his toes, because he's exciting, a reporter, all excited, on the story. And I said, let's just wait. So we let that tape roll for 30 seconds. Silence, it's a long time, 30 seconds. And we let it roll for another 30 seconds, silence. And then she reached down and she picked up a picture. And she picked up a picture of her son. And this is silence, we're quiet, we're just watching, and we're taping. And then she starts to cry. And then she starts to tell us one of the real stories of the water crisis in the Tehuacan Valley. She tells us the story that her children, the young people, and her son are leaving the village, are leaving Tehuacan. They're not leaving because they want managed health care in the U.S. They're not leaving because they want a brighter, a bigger life in the city. These are families that are much, much tighter than many families in other parts of the world or in the U.S. These are not necessarily mobile families. They were leaving because there was no money, there was no future, no economy. It was drying up. And she told us the story, her son left for LA a year ago. She doesn't know if he made it safely across the desert or arrived safely in LA or wherever he was going, because she hasn't heard from him since. So that's the story of the global water crisis. There are these types of stories, and all you have to do, many of us have the data already, you just have to scratch the surface to put the face on it. When we published this during the World Water Forum in Mexico City, 20,000 experts in the Banamex Concrete Conference Center with PowerPoints in every plenary hall running simultaneously. The media had no access to the story. They didn't know what the real story was. They could not parse it out. When we published this story, we are on the front page of every major newspaper in Mexico City. The closing ceremonies of the World Water Forum the next day, people were sitting in the back with the closing ceremonies going on in the huge plenary hall. They're reading La Jornada, El Universal y Financiero, the newspapers, and here was the Tehuacan Valley with Francisca and the story of the global water crisis. It was fresh, it was real, it was relevant, and the data for the media, for the communications, was not accessible in that conference center with 20,000 world experts. So anyway, we're in a really exciting time. I don't have to tell you that. We have so many data tools. We'll hear more about them. Majun has some very exciting things going in China. I ask really simple questions because I'm a journalist. Sometimes they're not easy to answer. So at the Wilson Center, I asked when we had a range of different organizations present to us their PowerPoints and data sets, the Army War College, the Nature Conservancy, World Wildlife Fund. I said, can't we bring your data together? Can we start to look at it, take the spreadsheets like this and line them up? So I went to Google and I said, can we do this? And they said, yeah, we can do that. We're Google, or we're the Google. So they created a project. It finally saw the light of day about a year ago, a project called Fusion Tables. And I won't do a full demonstration. I would encourage you to go online and look at Fusion Tables because it has so many new permutations to it. But it's a really easy way of pulling in data through spreadsheets from either dynamic, live, historical, sharing it, and then exporting it either to Google Earth, Google Maps, or other outputs, or even to apps on your iPhone or your Android or your iPad, or to other digital dashboards like QlikView. So a quick note, here's our competition. When we're talking about communication, we also have to talk about Mindspace. So what's our competition? Our competition this morning in Ann Arbor is the gorgeous farm market. That's a competition for sustainability. We're talking about sustainability here. People are selling organic vegetables just down the street in the sunshine on a beautiful day. But also our competition is this. Our competition is Mindspace. It's huge. This is the news as shown by a thing called Newsmap, which looks at the headline count in the Google around the world. So right now, our competition is with some monetary issues. Well, not really. But our competition is with sex, power, and the French. Okay, so every day when I gave this a little presentation last week, the competition was, one of the big headlines was that George Bush was eating souffle when Obama called to tell him about bin Laden. That was a top headline on the Google globally. Okay, that's what we're competing against. Our types of stories, our stories of sustainability are down here in the little pieces in the corner. We need to shoot for that upper left corner. It's back to the relevancy, it's back to the solid storytelling, and it's back to providing that data information, because the media is not going to do it for us. So a quick question here. Just give me one word. Just give me one word about today's mainstream media. Quick, just one word. Anything. What's your perception of the mainstream media? One word. Anything. Sensationalism. Sensationalism. Okay, one more. Fluff. Okay, so we got room for one more. Harmony. What? Harmony. Okay. Great. So we could make a huge list. We could fill up a list behind the page here. So anyway, we also have smarter, hungrier audiences. So again,